I'll never forget the summer of 1974 when the carnival came to Armington. Our little town, usually so quiet and predictable, was buzzing with excitement. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and news traveled faster than the wind. This year there was something new, something that made the carnival different from all the others before it. His name was Mr. Giggles. I first saw him standing in the middle of a crowd, surrounded by kids like me, all of us staring in awe. He was everything a clown should be, colorful, larger than life, with a smile that stretched from ear to ear. But even then, something about him felt off. His eyes, I remember, glinted in a way that made my skin crawl, like he was hiding something behind that painted grin. He did tricks, pulled flowers from thin air, made coins disappear, and twisted balloons into animals that seemed almost real. I was hooked, like everyone else, following him around the carnival as he moved from one trick to the next. But when the sun started to set, the excitement of the day shifted. The bright colors of the carnival seemed to dim, and the laughter of the children faded into uneasy whispers. I overheard some of the adults talking, their voices low and tense. They spoke of an old legend, of a clown who had come to Armington decades ago. He looked just like Mr. Giggles, they said, and when he left, some of the town's children had gone with him. They came back days later, wandering through the streets with no memory of where they'd been. But they were different, haunted, like something had followed them back. I didn't want to believe it. How could I? Mr. Giggles was just a clown, right? But then came that night, the night that changed everything. The carnival was winding down, the crowds thinning as families headed home. But I stayed. I couldn't explain why, but something drew me back to Mr. Giggles's tent. It stood at the far end of the carnival grounds, its striped fabric billowing in the evening breeze. I could hear laughter from inside, soft and eerie, like it was calling my name. I hesitated at the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. The air around me felt thick, heavy with a tension I couldn't understand. But the laughter, it was impossible to resist. I stepped inside. The tent was dark, lit only by a single flickering light that cast long, twisted shadows. Mr. Giggles stood in the center, his back to me, humming a tune that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. When he turned around, his eyes were glowing, an unnatural, almost sickly glow. And that smile, the one that had seemed so harmless before, now stretched impossibly wide, revealing far too many teeth. "Want to see a magic trick?" he whispered, his voice slithering through the darkness. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. I was trapped, frozen in place by those glowing eyes and that terrible smile. The world around me began to spin, faster and faster, until everything went black. When I woke up, it was morning. I was outside the tent, stumbling through the empty carnival grounds like I'd just woken from a nightmare. But this was real. I couldn't remember what had happened, where I'd been, or how I'd ended up there. All I knew was that something was wrong, very, very wrong. I looked down at my hand and saw I was clutching something. A ticket stub, old and tattered, like it had been through 100 carnivals. On it, in faded ink, were the words, "Admit 1, Mr. Giggles' Eternal Show." The carnival was gone by the time my parents found me. They were frantic, but all I could do was stare at that ticket stub, trying to piece together the fragments of my memory. But it was no use. The more I tried to remember, the more my mind recoiled, as if protecting me from something too horrible to face. That night, I lay in bed, my heart still racing, unable to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The room was dark, but I could hear it, laughter, faint and distant, echoing in the silence. It grew louder, closer, until I was sure it was coming from right outside my window. I pulled the covers over my head, squeezing my eyes shut, but the laughter wouldn't stop. It was him. I knew it. Mr. Giggles had found me, and he wasn't going to let me go. From that night on, the laughter never left me. It followed me everywhere, a constant reminder of that terrible night in the tent. I was haunted, marked by a clown who existed outside of time, a creature who had taken something from me, something I could never get back. And now, every time the carnival returns to Armington, I see the kids, laughing and playing just like I did. They don't know what waits for them in the shadows, what horrors are hidden behind that painted smile, but I do. And I pray every night that Mr. Giggles doesn't choose them, because once he does, there's no escape. There never is. Subscribe for more dark dreams horror.